Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Team CBT with Daniel and myself, Angela. And today we have Dr. Taylor Chesney, and she's the director of the Feeling Good Institute in New York. Welcome, Dr. Taylor.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with our very first question that we ask everybody first, and that is, how did you get into Team CBT?
Awesome. So in 2012, my husband and I had just gotten married, and he got a fellowship at Stanford for critical care medicine. And the one thing we used to always argue and debate about was therapy. He is an ER doctor, and he always wants to know, what change are you going to make? How are you going to measure it? How is my patient going to get better? And I was in a psychodynamic graduate school program, and I would always tell him, it doesn't matter how you're going to change, right? As long as you understand and talk about the problem. And so I decided that we were moving out to California, and I don't like to lose arguments. So I was going to learn everything there was to learn about CBT and prove him wrong. And so while I was looking for my job out there, I found David Burns and his team CBT, and contacted Jacob Towery and Brack, Self, and all the great team therapists out there. And I was determined to figure out everything so I could prove my husband wrong. And unfortunately, it's the only argument I've ever lost and will ever lose with my husband, and fell in love with team. And just everything it stood for really resonated with my personality and how I like to communicate with people and have results and bring about rapid change and do things very quickly. So while I was deeply entrenched in one way of thinking, this quickly opened my mind to a very different and effective version of therapy. So that's how I got hooked years ago.
That's a great story, and it's kind of funny how we go to like prove somebody wrong, and in the process have a revelation ourselves, and it shows that you're willing to change and see truth, and that's pretty awesome, and exciting.
Yep. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to hike those trails in the mountains with David and do some of my own self-improvement and self-work. And not only did what they say make sense, but then when I used it myself, it really kind of transformed my life and the way I see things. So it's just been a really awesome personal and professional growth.
Great. I love that. I love that story. I've heard most of that before, not maybe the whole argument piece of it, but a good deal of the training parts. So that's fantastic. And of course, when we think of ATL, we just know not only are you, of course, the master, team CBT therapist and trainer, but of course you're like really associated, which to me is just remarkable about how to apply this not only with like teenagers, but even children who are younger. And I guess one thing I don't really know so much about, you could maybe tell our viewers, is like how did that come about? Was that something already in graduate school or before or part of your training over there?
Great question. So my graduate degree was in school and clinical psychology. And before I went to college, I actually wanted to be a teacher. And so working with kids has always been in my nature and something I always loved and felt passionate about. And when I was a teacher, I really was drawn to being a therapist because I loved the one-on-one work with children. So that's how I kind of first fell in love with working with children and adolescents, and felt like there was really a lack of great resources for kids and families. So that's sort of where it's always been an interest of mine, but then also in becoming a parent and kind of navigating that world, both having like the real life experience of like what it's like to be a parent and have kids and see them struggle, as well as sort of what you learn in the textbook, right, of what's right and wrong. So I just felt like all of those things kind of pointed me in the direction. And then I had the wonderful guidance of Jacob Towery, who's an awesome child and adolescent psychiatrist. So he really inspired me to be able to use these skills with that population.
And of course, you're a therapist, but you're still a teacher, of course, because we always think about, not just change in the moment, right? But we're teaching our patients to become their own therapists. And of course, you do so much teaching and training of therapists. So that's great how you managed to really incorporate all of that into the work that you do.
Yes.
That's very cool. So speaking of parents and working with team, in team, we have the 5 secrets, and there's the disarming technique, which is finding the truth in what someone else is saying. How do you navigate that with parents? I mean, if you're going to agree with the kids all the time, how does that help enforce, behavior change?
Oh, I love that question, Angela. It's something I talk to parents about all the time, right? So we have the 5 secrets of effective communication, really awesome ways of improving our communication. And the first one being the disarming technique, finding some truth in what the other person is saying, even if we're disagreeing. And so this is a really important skill that I teach parents. And then the first pushback I get is, well, if I agree with them, doesn't that mean I give in? So like a great example is, oh, mommy, look at that donut, or look at that cookie. It's so delicious, right? So there's nothing wrong with saying like, you're right, that's such a delicious cookie, right? Or screen time, like talking to my friends at 10 o'clock at night when I should be going to sleep is so much fun. Like, absolutely, right? I love texting my friends at 10 o'clock at night. That doesn't mean that then that's followed up with, and no problem, you could do that as long as you want, right? So I think as parents, we're very quick to kind of say no, or kind of push our agenda, and not first see the world through their eyes, connect, and then you can set a firm or loving limit with them. But I think you're much more able to be effective when you can agree with the child, see the world through their eyes, and then find a way to get to the rule or the limit that you need to set with them.
That is such a great way to combine it. And I think 100% right in that, like, aligning with someone before, I guess we would say advice giving in therapy, but as parents, behavior modification makes so much sense, and helps that motivation, and teaches them how to have good motivation based on relationships, not just because mom said so or dad said so, but actually give them some tools to guide their behavior in a way that's probably more advantageous long term, when they're in other relationships, I would imagine.
Yeah, and also a lot of what we know about kids is when they're more regulated, when they feel more grounded and their bucket is filled, they're more willing to listen, right? And so I think when kids don't feel listened to or heard or understood, they go into fight or flight response, right? They're very activated and they're not able to be the best version of themselves. So rather than leading with like a no, or it's time to go to bed, shut that off. I don't want to hear about your texting with your friends or 5 more minutes. They go into like, I need that mode, right? And they cling to whatever that is more, right? We talk about David has his law of opposites, right?
Yes.
That when we tell someone, tell someone they can't have something, they want it even more. Or if you try to convince someone of that you're right, they're gonna kind of resist. So I think the same principle happens there with kids, that they then act out more.
For sure.
Interesting. So I was also wondering, Kelly, I know you told us that your original training was from a psychodynamic background, which I guess my graduate program was as well. So I'm curious, I guess, like what, as you shifted into CBT and team, what about it, really kind of appealed to you? And I'm also curious if you still incorporate any elements of that training from the psychodynamic background.
Well, I think I love that question. The part that I really incorporate that I loved about the psychodynamic orientation is the importance a bit of the relationship between the patient and therapist. And that was really emphasized in my training. And I think that is really important. But I don't think it was actually taught of like, how do you develop that type of good relationship, an effective relationship with a patient. And I think team really highlights that through testing and through empathy.
Right, kind of giving a roadmap how to get there, not just how important it is, but how can we build that relationship?
Right. And also emphasizing the options that we have in treatment of talking about something and understanding it versus working on it and getting skills and getting better. And so when I start therapy with a patient or their family, I really highlight what we can work on and what we can accomplish, and really being very clear in articulating my preference is to work on something and to bring about change. And these are the skills and tools that we would use and what would be required to get better. And that some people also want listening and support and empathy. And that's not entirely my best skill set of kind of listening and talking, and that there's many wonderful therapists out there. But I find that by really highlighting those different things, you can be a more effective therapist because you could own what you're offering and if that aligns with what a patient really wants.
What's interesting is this shift that you're talking about from psychodynamic to team CBT, and it sounds quite different because I mean team's pretty structured, and psychodynamic tends to be a little more fluid and present with the relationship. Are there any goals or was there any shifts for you in terms of what you thought was attainable in your actual practice and your work with clients now that you do team CBT?
I think what's really attainable is having specific tools for change and really emphasizing what the goal of therapy is not to not feel the things that you're feeling, but to know when you feel them and when you're struggling with them, what to do, right? In team, we talk about relapse prevention, right? It's especially with kids, it's not that they never have another temper tantrum again, right? Like, I don't know a parent who has a child who's never had one of those, right? But it's to feel empowered to know how to handle it from a parent's perspective, to know how the parent contributes to it, what skills the parent can attain, what skills the child can do, and really have a roadmap of when these challenges come up, how we're going to handle it. And also, from speaking team language, knowing what parts of it you want to hold on to, right? What parts of this behavior you're attached to and need and help you in some way, right? Anxiety isn't something that you're going to completely wipe away, right? We don't want to turn a child with anxiety that has test anxiety, right, into a child that doesn't ever care about a test. We just want to give them skills that when they feel the anxiety, they know what to do and can turn down the anxiety to a degree that's adaptive.
Right.
And so it's really kind of figuring out and having the tools to feel the way you want to feel. And when you don't feel the way you want to feel, what you can do about it. Whereas I feel like in my psychodynamic therapy, I never entirely knew where like the end was. And I think there's great value in kind of understanding yourself better and understanding how these habits are formed. And that's why a lot of times I partner with other types of therapists to work on a specific issue. So, if I'm treating obsessive compulsive disorder, sometimes I'll have a patient who wants to be in long-term talk supportive therapist and with a long-term talk supportive therapist, but they're having a stuck point in this one area, and I'll work with them on that issue. So I think they're all, valid, wonderful things. It's just I feel passionate about bringing about change and giving children and teens and their parents a skill set to change and improve their life.
Yeah, and that, like I said, flows from the goals that we set in Team CBT. So one thing I'm kind of curious about, I know you've talked about this before, but how you handle it when, let's say, the child or teenager that you're working with has a certain goal to work on, and the parents are telling you there's other goals that they want you to work on. How do you navigate that?
That's never happened. All the patients I see, everyone wants the same.
Everyone's aligned. So hypothetically.
I sort of view myself as like the quarterback of the team. So when I start working with a family, I'll do a 2-session intake with the children or the adolescent. and I'll meet with the parents for one session, and then I do a wrap-up session. And in that session, I'll kind of synthesize, okay, this is what the child sees as the problem, or the teen. This is what the parent sees as the problem. This is how I feel like I can help, and see if we could come up with a plan that works for everyone, rather than a parent calls me, hi, my child's having a lot of anxiety. Can you help them? Sure. Meet with the parent, the child, and then we realize they have totally different goals. So I try to be very purposeful about how I set up treatment, and very transparent to kind of have a shared vision of what treatment will look like. And the great part of that is that once we get started, everyone knows kind of what to expect. The negative is, unfortunately, I'm not a magician. I can't, convince people to change in ways that they don't want to. And so there are certain, teens or children that I can't help because they want their parents to change, or I can't help the parents because they want the kid to change. So really, through this intake process, we figure out who has what goals and who I can help, and how I can help.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking, you mentioned being a parent. How has team affected you personally?
In lots and lots of ways. First and foremost, I feel like in terms of my relationship and communication with my children, I parent with a lot of love and empathy and support. And I try not to offer help when it's not, requested. So a lot of trying to get a buy-in with my kids if they're wanting help on something. But I think really most importantly, how it's helped me as a parent is to cope with my normal anxiety of being a parent, and perfectionism, and all things that I think loving, wonderful parents struggle with, and separating that out so it doesn't come into my parenting. Sort of, I think every parent deals with feelings of not being good enough, worrying about their children. So I feel like because I'm able to keep that all at bay and think about a situation more objectively, think about what are the cognitive distortions I'm having in these thoughts, right? These are things that happen automatically. I feel like because I've mastered a daily mood log and I'm able to turn down my degree of worry, I'm able to think about what my worry says about me and myself as a parent. That's really great and awesome. I feel like I'm able to approach my family and my parenting with a lower degree of anxiety, which I think helps the whole situation. And also really understanding that kids have feelings too, and they're fine. We just need to help them navigate through some of the challenges. And I'll say the last thing that I really feel passionate about as a parent and kind of bring to my parenting is that I have 4 children, one of who's under 1, so I don't really know her personality yet, but same genetic material, same environment. They are all completely different and completely wonderful and awesome. And I never want one of them to be like the other. So I view each of them as having different abilities and capabilities, and that my goal as a parent is to bring out the best in them given their unique skill sets, right? Like neither of them need to be able to accomplish the same things. Neither need to be as athletic or as intelligent or as social than the other, but figuring out like what is the best version of that, and helping them acquire the skills to get there, and be at peace myself, right, with what they're able to do.
It's kind of like a sitting with open hands approach to parenting.
Yes.
Very
much.
Take it or leave it. Pretty amazing how these different things integrate into our parenting and can take the pressure off the kids. Like sometimes we mean well as parents, but because we're so anxious, we're trying to fix things that probably really don't need fixing other than our own thinking about the situation or the problem.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of research in, parents and they're dealing with their own anxiety and how that impacts your attachment to your child, right? Even things in terms of self-care and taking care of yourself so you can be the best version of yourself to be a better parent.
Great. I love that. As a father myself, I think a lot about that, how team impacts my parenting, and my parenting impacts my being a team therapist. So wish we had more time. There's so many more things we could ask you, but we'll wrap up with our last question that we always ask everyone, which is, if Taylor, all the therapists in the world were listening, what would be just the one thing about team that you would like them to know?
Oh, such a rich question. If all the therapists in the world were listening, and they wanted to learn one thing about team, I really think it's the agenda setting, right? I think that brings me so much relief as a therapist, that we're working with patients on things that they want help with, and helping a therapist be great at identifying and working with their patient to figure out what they want help with and what will be required to bring about that change, and being okay with if what the child or parent or family wants isn't what you think they need, right? But really figuring out how what they're stuck with helps them, what values it speaks to that they have, and understanding what's going to be required to bring about that change. So I feel like if everyone's on, you could have the best techniques and tools in the world, but if you're not all working on the same goal, therapy is just not going to be effective. So
definitely with you on that one for sure. It's been a game changer for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor, for being here with us. So we're out of time today, but thank you so much. And thanks to all our viewers and listeners. Bye-bye, everyone.
My pleasure.
Bye.